Hey guys, this is Miss Aligar and you are watching part 1 of the 3-part series on using modifiers in narrative prose. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple of important things, and there are 5 terms that I want you to be very familiar with. First is modifiers. What are they? They are phrases and clauses used to give more detail to the main clause of a sentence. For some of us, we know these as fragments and phrases and dependent clauses. Narrative prose is a definite story told through events and actions, and these are going to be a lot like most books you've read. So you should be familiar with what narrative prose looks like and sounds like. The last thing I want to talk to you a little bit about is filmography terms. You're probably thinking, these have absolutely nothing to do with writing, Miss Algar. Why are you telling me about filmography terms? You'll find out in a little bit what writers can do in order to mimic the effect of zooming in or zooming out. And so you need to know the term close up, which is a very close shot of the face only, a mid shot, which typically gets the subject from the middle of their body up and includes a little bit of the background, and lastly a wide shot in which you have the entire subject exposed as well as a lot of the background. Now, why is this all important? It's important because where you place a modifier matters. It absolutely does. Depending on which type of modifier you use and where you choose to place it, it draws the reader's eye to a certain place in your text. And as a great writer, that's what you want to do. You want to create images that draw readers in. So there are 3 types of modifiers that you should be familiar with. First is the introductory. It begins sentences. They appear at the beginning of sentences. So we know these as those dependent clauses that come up, right? The dependent clauses that start although, blah, 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 and so on. So that could be considered a modifier. Next, you've got an interrupter. Okay? Interrupters interrupt, obviously, the subject and the verb of the sentence. So they're usually punctuated by, you've got the sentence, you've got a comma, the interrupter modifier, another comma, and the rest of the sentence, period. Okay, that's obviously a really bad rendition, but you will see what this looks like. And lastly, you've got the add-on. It comes at the very end of the sentence. Okay, so let's take a look at these in action. So first, let's take a look at the introductory modifier, and this begins the sentence. It appears at the beginning of the sentence. So how would we do it here? Our original sentences say, Mandy was hunched over a cup of hot chocolate. She was covered in snow and shivering. What I want to do is take this independent clause and turn it into an introductory modifier for it to go right at the beginning of this sentence. So now what I've done is moved covered in snow and shivering. I took out the part that said she was, so that's out, and I left this part in, added the comma, and then gave you that main independent clause. So what this does is it effectively brings you in close for this close-up of Mandy, right? It's giving you a little bit of detail, so you see the snow, and you can imagine her shivering a little bit. And then it pans out a little bit. It's more mid-shot of her. And you see then the cup of hot chocolate that she's got in her hands to keep warm. Now we're taking a look at the interrupter modifier, and this now appears between the subject and the verb of a sentence. Okay, so our original sentence here says, the old and wrinkled grandmother gazed lovingly at the family's newest addition. Now what I want to do is move these adjectives right here. I want to put them somewhere else to draw the attention to the grandma so that we see this, so we get a little bit of a close-up. So now you see that I've moved the two adjectives, old and wrinkled, to the middle of the sentence, right between our subject and our verb. So making the interrupter. And now our eyes are drawn to the grandma. It gives us a little bit more detail about her, and it creates a little bit of a pause because of these commas. These commas create a pause as we speak, right? If we were to read it, we would say the grandma, old and wrinkled, gazed lovingly at the family's newest addition. It slows down the writing for us a little bit so that we take a little bit of a longer look at grandma before we pan out for this mid shot, or I guess we could call it a wide shot, of the grandma holding the baby. Last but not least, we have the add-on modifiers, and these come in at the very end of your sentence. So let's take a look at the original sentences I have here. It says, Riley looked on at Jenny dotingly. He cradled her hand in his. Now what I want to do now is take this second clause and add it to the first one. By doing this, I will draw the attention to this very tight angle right here, this very tight close-up of the couple's face before panning out a little bit to get the full image. So now let's take a look at the sentence with the add-on modifier. Now I've taken the he cradles her hand in his and I've turned it into a participial phrase. Now adding it here, cradling her hand in his, and so it effectively brings your eyes right into Riley and Jenny looking at each other and bringing you to the full shot of the two of them, right? Finally, including the cradling of the hand in his. So let's quickly recap. So we learned that modifiers give a little bit more detail to main clauses, right? And that there are three types. You've got the introductory, the interrupter, and the add-on. And this appears at the beginning, if I could spell beginning, middle, and end, respectively. And these can draw your eyes closer to a specific image and eventually pan out, right? Or you could get the opposite effect depending on how you use it. Now, remember that when it comes to narrative prose, you're using this to draw the reader's eye. You're drawing the reader's eye to the important images that you want to draw, the things that you want the reader to notice and learn about your writing. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comments section or in the bulletin board. Thank you for watching.